On May 24th, after a 10-month investigation, I released a report on the rise in ransomware attacks and the use of cryptocurrency as ransom payments in these attacks. That report I entered into the record in my opening comments. One of my report's key findings is that the federal government simply does not have comprehensive data on ransomware threat landscape. So, Ms. Stiefel, I have two questions for you. First off, do you agree with this finding? And second, in the Institute for Security and Technology's Ransomware Task Force report, your organization advocates for mandatory reporting requirements on ransomware attack payments made in cryptocurrency. Why do you believe that this data is necessary? If you could answer both those questions, I'd appreciate it.
Senator, I do agree with the observation that, or the finding that there is not sufficient information within the government's holdings about payments in cryptocurrencies. We know, as has been highlighted in the testimony of Ms. Coven, as well as Mr. Siegel, that there are many who do, attempt to comply with these requirements and regulations. However, there are also those who do not. And this leads to a significant amount of discrepancy in the amount of information that may be available to those in the ecosystem versus those who are receiving the information on the government side. The other challenge here is that within the organizations that do collect information on the government side, whether it be FinCEN, the CISA, or IC3, the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, they ask for different types of information, which also contributes to a disaggregated picture of the threat. With regard to your second question, Senator, we believe that the mandatory reporting requirement will help the government have a better picture of the actual scale and scope of this threat. We also believe that information needs to get into the hands of the private sector, who, as I mentioned in my testimony, can work with the government to collectively combat these actors when the information is delivered in a timely manner and it is relevant. I do agree significantly with Mr. Siegel's comment that we need to be very structured in the way that the government needs to be very structured in the way that it seeks the information that it will receive under the reporting requirements of the recently passed legislation. It is critical that the information be relevant and that the government is equipped to manage the information, not only in analyzing it itself, but also in ensuring that it can receive and disseminate the information to private sector actors who can appropriately manage the information and take appropriate action with respect to it.
Thank you. During my investigation, federal agencies expressed to my team concerns with gaps in the ability to enforce anti-money laundering laws applicable to cryptocurrency against illicit actors outside of the United States. The report found that such gaps impede law enforcement's ability to investigate, to prosecute, and prevent cryptocurrency-enabled crimes. Ms. Coven, and then Ms. Stiefel, I'll ask you to answer this question after Ms. Coven answers. What shortfalls do you see regarding enforcement of anti-money laundering regulations with respect to illicit cryptocurrency transactions, both in the United States and abroad? And the second question, what has happened to address these shortfalls, and can regulations alone solve this problem, or does Congress have a role here? If you could handle those questions for me now, and then Ms. Stiefel after Ms. Coven.
Thank you for your question, Senator. And yes, we have observed a winnowing down of the cash-out destinations for illicit actors, including ransomware actors, mainly to offshore exchanges with little to no regulation and enforcement, which underscores our recommendation for enhanced U.S. assistance in implementing AML, anti-money laundering laws, to cut off those illicit cash-out destinations. We've also observed the increased utilization of mixing services by these threat actors to obfuscate the destination of these ransomware proceeds. And I can point to a number of government successes over the last year that have actually used blockchain analysis to trace payments to these high-risk exchanges, and law enforcement action against Garantex, Blender.io, ChatX, and SueX, primarily services based in Russia. And what we saw as a result of these designations, especially against SueX, was that deposits dropped nearly to zero as soon as the designations were rolled out. And so there are a number of policy options for these illicit cash-out destinations. And blockchain forensics is a key tool in being able to identify where these threat actors are cashing out. And if we look at Blender.io, that mixing service in particular, it was not only used by multiple ransomware groups, it was also used by North Korean launderers from stolen funds. So these threat actors are going for the path of least resistance, but it has narrowed down considerably to a handful of services that the U.S. can help support with implementing AML regulations.
Thank you, Ms. Coven. Ms. Stiefel?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I would agree with Ms. Coven that the impact of regulation in the United States has resulted in many cases the offshoring of the ability for these actors to convert cryptocurrency into fiat, and as a result, the absence of regulation overseas has provided this pathway for the conversion to continue to facilitate the demand for and the desire for ransomware as a tool to generate financial gain. In other words, were we to have a more consistent regulatory environment internationally through the application of KYC, AML, and other regulatory measures by working with partners, including through the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, that has been effective in the terrorism instances, that would provide a pathway, I think, for there to be a more significant impact on the ability for governments to obtain information that can facilitate arrests or other disruptive measures against these criminal actors. Senator, you also asked about the role of Congress here, and I would agree that there is I think the reporting legislation is a significant step forward. It was something that was called for in our task force report, as you mentioned. I think there's also a need for an opportunity for Congress to continue to also clarify other measures that private sector entities may take with respect to information about cybersecurity incidents, including by clarifying the scope of the Cybersecurity and Information Sharing Act of 2015, and to be constantly mindful of the importance of there being harmony across and not overly complicating matters with respect to ongoing regulatory opportunities, looking to streamline the process to allow for consistency in application so that victims are clear where they need to report, what they need to report, and within what period of time, and also their role in ensuring that they are working to and equipping them to better maintain their systems in a more secure manner to reduce the likelihood of ransomware in the future.